So I know this isn't going to come as a galloping shock to anybody, but all organizations have to generate leads, right? We know this. What a lot of people don't think about, though, is that nonprofits have to generate leads as well. But there's a little bit of difference in how they do it. So let's talk about that. What's different? What's the same? Hey everybody, I'm Ian Campbell and I'm CEO of Mission Suite. Before we jump into today's video, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you're notified anytime that we post new videos. So a lot of times nonprofits rely on donors to pay for the day-to-day operations of their organization. And they have a responsibility to those donors to not waste the valuable dollars that they've been given. Mass mailings to potential donors with no connection to your organization or to your cause is not going to generate donations required to cover the time, the wages, the cost of printing and mailing and all the other things that you need to actually recover those resources and that money and whatnot, and add new value to the donor base, right? Shooting in the dark, hoping to hit a potential donor is financially and fiscally irresponsible. Experienced fundraisers know that the likelihood of donation from someone who has no personal connection to your agency or someone the agency serves is pretty low, and they spend pretty little or maybe no time on non-qualified prospects because A, it's doubtful to lead to a significant donation, B, it wastes valuable organizational resources, and C, it's kind of wrong to waste those resources on things that are not going to actually yield any results. Nonprofits have a fiduciary responsibility to their donors and the constituents that they serve to operate efficiently and spend responsibly. So how do they do that? Well, let's talk a little bit about a qualified donor profile. So what is a qualified donor profile? Well, before we talk about what a qualified donor profile or a QDP is, let's start with what it's not. A QDP is not a name or an email or a street mailing address or a phone number that's been farmed from some wealth screening database. It hasn't been taken from a donor report from another nonprofit, and it's not from a list that's been purchased or downloaded from some sort of a website. Those are contacts. There's a lot of work that needs to happen to turn a contact into a qualified profile. See, a lot of nonprofit organizations are going to turn to some sort of wealth screening or donor reports in an attempt to find new leads. Right? They're going to send out heartwarming letters with hopes of wowing that person or that company with their heartwarming messaging. They're going to touch them so deeply that they're going to write this big check that's going to bankroll their organization for the coming year, the coming years sometimes. They think that the more letters that they send, the greater their chances of gaining some sort of a new supporter. And if they send out enough correspondence, it's going to eventually lead to the desired result. Now, I get that thinking, and there's a little bit of truth there. Unfortunately, not enough to really make it worth it. See, the problem with this approach is that information is being sent to hundreds of so-called donors who actually have no personal connection to your organization and, even more detrimentally, have no personal connection to its cause. And they've probably not been affected by the problems that your agency is trying to solve. Right? They're also receiving multiple requests from a lot of organizations asking them for money, and a lot of those are just ending up in the trash can. Think about it. If an organization is on a mission to raise awareness about the adverse effects of litter in the community, and they're on a mission to clean up litter from public places and from the sides of the roads, the letter goes to two people, both of whom have the same amount of money. One person is deeply disturbed by all that litter and they want it cleaned up, right? The second person throws their fast food bag out the car window. Which person do you think is more likely to actually support the cause? See, random communications sent out in hopes of landing a donor usually don't work. Procuring donors is a process that all begins with a qualified donor profile. And a qualified donor profile is somebody or some company who's actually interested in the cause of your nonprofit. You know that they're interested because maybe they've reached out to you for more information based on some sort of message or some sort of communication that was maybe dropped somewhere by you. Maybe they've seen you on the website. Maybe they've seen you on social media. But once a person's reached out to your organization, whether they've visited a landing page, subscribed to a newsletter, or attended an event, or left their email address, whatever it is, if they've taken some sort of action toward learning about your cause or your organization, well, now they're a qualified donor. Now they're at least qualified, right? But keep in mind that not all qualified donors are the same, right? For example, just because someone reached out to learn about your company, your organization, doesn't mean that they have the capacity to actually donate a lot of money. Simply put, a QDP is just the starting point of a dialogue that's ultimately going to lead to some sort of a relationship, maybe financial, maybe not. But the goal of that relationship is hopefully to blossom into some sort of support for that organization. Now, again, QDPs are not all the same, so there are a few things to look at when qualifying a prospective donor. Has the person or that entity expressed interest in your organization based on some sort of printed or digital information, maybe on an event or another activity that your organization has put together? As we talked about before, if a person or entity has provided their contact information in an attempt to learn more about your organization, then they are automatically, by definition, a qualified donor, right? Well, potentially a qualified donor. At least you know that they're interested in you. Now, does the person, maybe the company that you're talking to, do they have a specific interest or some sort of compelling emotional reason in supporting the mission of your nonprofit? People that are personally affected by the particular problem that you're solving are much more likely to become donors. For example, a family member of a person with developmental disability can connect with the cause because of the personal story. So it's much more likely to relate to an agency serving those with developmental disabilities. Is that person or that company familiar with your organization? If they've advocated for you before, then maybe they're a qualified profile. If they volunteered for you, maybe they're a qualified profile. If they shared messaging, they could be qualified for you, right? Have they actually told you that they want to give to you, right? This one's a no-brainer, right? They're obviously qualified. Do they have the means? Do they have the capacity? Do they have the money to support your organization, right? Someone living paycheck to paycheck may have a compelling emotionally based interest in your organization, but simply don't have the means to give a cash donation. Doesn't mean they can't be a qualified lead, but you might approach them for volunteering or maybe sharing your messaging, doing something other than actually supporting you financially. So let's talk a little bit about how nonprofits actually generate QDPs. Developing a base of QDPs requires a substantial amount of work upfront and is an ongoing process for most nonprofits, both new and the established ones. That being said, there are a lot of different ways to find and to attract those potential qualified donors. The best place to start is on your nonprofit's website, right? You always start with messaging. You need clear and concise messaging about that organization, about what you're doing, about the problem that you're solving, and why it's important to actually get it solved. Nonprofit organizations have a particular advantage over for-profit businesses because they're usually flush with compelling and emotional stories that can be tapped into about how an organization is helping a particular constituency or affecting some sort of a change. A well-crafted message is going to help create an emotional connection to the organization and provide a lot of different opportunities for an interested party to engage through clear calls to action, right? Speaking of, a well-crafted message and straightforward call to action are going to be the reason that somebody responds, right? That's going to be the reason that someone kind of raises their hand and says, hey, I'm a qualified donor prospect, right? Calls to action should be located in all of your digital messaging systems, like your social media posts, your email campaigns, on your website landing pages, whole 9 yards. They can tell an individual what you would like them to do, right? Subscribe to the newsletter, join the mailing list, check out the blog, contact us for more information, learn more stories, the whole 9 yards, right? They're designed to effectively turn people interested in your organization into qualified donor prospects. Effective messaging always includes one or sometimes a few clear calls to action. Digital tools like websites, social media sites, email campaigns, and advertisements also offer excellent opportunities to generate those QDPs. Right? With effective messaging and clear calls to action, fundraisers can create points of engagement between you and someone who's actually reading your message. Petitions are a great example of a digital tool that actually work for procuring qualified donor prospects. A petition campaign sends a strong message about a problem that your organization is trying to change. It engages a prospect by compelling them to take a pretty simple but meaningful action, which is signing the petition, and it can help them help make change. Now, once someone has responded to that kind of call to action for your organization to put out, or kind of filled out that form, for example, you know that they are interested in your cause. Often when someone signs a petition, they repost it on their social media, which could also lead to other qualified profiles. Now, before we go any further, I do want to take a second here. Now, I know it seems complicated and sometimes feels like it's a bit too much work to do, but I can assure you that it's not. And at the end of the day, it's worth it. If you're looking to keep track of your qualified profile, donor prospects, the leads, and the donor's journey, then you need a great CRM that can actually help. And we'd be thrilled to talk to you more about how Missions we can help you do that. Now, back to the QDPs. Now, events are another great way to let people get to know your organization and to generate those qualified donor prospects. Events offer the opportunity to put out informational brochures, collect email addresses, and meet face-to-face with members of the community and share your cause and begin to work on one-on-one relationships, those that often produce the most support. One-on-one relationships, speaking of, they are the entire reason for inquiring those QDPs in the end is actually developing some sort of one-on-one relationship, right? Making a connection. Those one-on-one interactions allow the fundraisers in your organization an opportunity to really get to know what an organization is about, right? They build trust. They learn everything about what makes a particular donor want to give. The goal here is to establish a relationship where making a gift is as beneficial and fulfilling to the giver as it is to the recipient. Now, volunteers, board members, constituent family members, those who are grateful to your organization for helping them or a loved one, should consistently be recognized as qualified prospects as well. Now, maybe they have the means to make a financial contribution, maybe they don't. Right? Those who believe in your organization and feel compelled to help can offer practical resources such as time, labor, testimonials, expertise, anything like that, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be financial, but community engagement is a hugely valuable resource for nonprofits and should be included in any sort of a segmenting plan. Now, many nonprofits make the mistake of only training their development team in effective donor stewardship. That can be problematic, because success happens when your whole team understands the essential role that donors play in funding day-to-day operations and how they can act as ambassadors to turn contacts into qualified donor prospects. A firm understanding what constitutes a QDP and the following steps that need to be taken is a process in which all of your staff should be trained and engaged on. It is important here to follow up and to remember that a QDP is just the starting point of a relationship between a potential donor and a nonprofit organization. Someone has expressed an interest and initiated a conversation based on a message, an event, or a call to action that was initiated by your organization. Now the goal of that organization, of your organization, is to follow up and to create a relationship with that qualified prospect, newly qualified prospect, that will go through another process before a fundraiser even actually makes an ask, right? Once that relationship is established, it's time to start nurturing, right? It's essentially to properly nurture that relationship by developing some sort of open and trustworthy and honest communication, right? You want transparent interactions with that prospect, because this is when a fundraiser actually learns what they can about the donor while teaching the donor everything that they can and really need to know about the organization. Now, again, not all of these qualified prospects are the same. So work to segment the QDPs into categories such as major donor, minor donor, planned giver, volunteer. Maybe they've got capacity to give. You know, you're gonna segment based on that. Don't write a potential donor off just because they can't offer a monetary donation right now. Volunteers often bring expertise, skills, and other resources to the table, and ultimately, oftentimes become donors as well. Now, timing here is, don't make an ask of that prospect until they've been adequately vetted by having all the information that they need to decide to support your organization, and they've been paired with the right person from your team who are going to financially secure that donation. Qualifying donor prospects is the beginning of the donor relationship process. Good fundraisers find creative ways to use messaging, digital tools, all the different things that we've talked about to engage with to engage potential donors with your nonprofit and bring them into the playing field. Emphasizing qualifying donor prospects may feel unsurmountable initially, but are ultimately going to yield in just much greater results in the long run. And great fundraisers are probably going to have help in keeping track of all this, right? They're going to need it in some way, shape, or form. Look into a CRM to help you. right? It's going to be hugely important because that's the way that you're going to be able to understand who's doing what, who's in your database, where they are in the journey, the whole 9 yards. And of course, reach out to us at Mission Suite. We're happy to help you with that. We're happy to help clarify anything that you heard here or offer you any advice on how to make this more effective. Listen, I hope that you got something out of this video. If you did, do me a favor, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share so that others can see it too. That definitely helps us with the engagement, and it helps us with this whole YouTube algorithm that we're working with. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so that you're notified when we post new videos. And check out the other videos that you're seeing here on your screen. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time around. Cheers.